You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I have to start with a Yankees rumor. According to Buster Olney of ESPN, the Yankees have been in contact with Michael Brantley. Now, this is pretty interesting, and I'm gonna tell you why. Yesterday, I spoke about the possibility of Kyle Schwarber coming to the Yankees. Now, it's possible he comes as a bat off the bench, maybe a catcher of sorts, a DH of sorts. But the most likely scenario that we see Kyle Schwarber in pinstripes is if he's the starting left fielder. What's important to note there is that there really wasn't a report saying the Yankees are still interested in Schwarber. That was more people connecting the dots. The Yankees were interested in Schwarber in the past. It's a reasonable assumption to say that they'd still be interested in him. We don't know if that's true, but this is a real report from a respected baseball insider. Buster Olney has been doing this for a long time. So if he says something, it's worth listening to. That the Yankees are looking at starting left fielders. That's the only way Brantley's coming to the Yankees. This guy isn't coming off a down season like Schwarber. Can he play other positions? He has some experience in center, but he hasn't played center field since 2015. Plus the Yankees have X. They're not going to put Brantley in center. That's not going to happen. DH? Again, Giancarlo Stanton. The only spot for him is left field. This tells you that the Yankees are interested in upgrading their starting left fielder. You can wax poetic about Clint Frazier all you want. No guarantee that he duplicates what he did last year in 2021 and beyond. Michael Brantley, you know what you're going to get. This is a guy who's going to hit 300, 15 to 20 homers. Obviously, last season there was no All-Star game. So this guy's sitting on a streak of making 3 consecutive All-Star games. If the Yankees bring in Michael Brantley, that's an excellent move. It brings up an interesting point. Will they have the money to pay him and LeMahieu? The answer is probably yes. I don't see the Yankees upgrading their left fielder by weakening themselves at second base. That's robbing Peter to pay Paul. I don't think the Yankees are going to do that. I think the Yankees see an opportunity to get a really good lefty who would balance out their lineup. Lord knows they could use a lefty. Same reason Schwarber would make sense. And they can trade Frazier in a deal for a starter. Maybe Marco Gonzalez, maybe someone else. Lord knows they could use a lefty starter. Is it a guarantee that Brantley comes to the Yankees? Absolutely not. But I think it's interesting that the Yankees are focusing on upgrading their starting left fielder. If nothing else, this signals that the Yankees aren't sold on Frazier. And they don't want Tauchman as their starting left fielder. I'd be okay with Tauchman starting in left, but if the Yankees don't want to do it, c'est la vie. The bottom line is the Yankees aren't sold on Clint Frazier. It was a great story what he did last year. Give him credit. He proved me wrong. I thought he was going to flame out. But what did I say? It makes sense to trade him at his highest point. Is it possible that he gets better than this? Anything's possible. I'd probably say no. He's got to do more than play 39 great games in a 60-game farce of a season for me to say that this guy's gonna really pan out as a major leaguer. Is it possible that the Yankees have Frazier as their starting left fielder next year? Yeah. And if the season started tomorrow, that's probably what would end up happening. But you've got to realize the Yankees have a huge hole in their rotation. They need another lefty starter. Jordan Montgomery is fine as the second lefty starter. I like Montgomery a lot. I understand he didn't have a great year last year, but again, 60-game joke. I'm willing to give him a pass. He's only started 17 games in the past 3 seasons. I remember what he did his rookie season. He looked really good. I want to give Montgomery a chance to recapture that form. The Yankees aren't going to bring Happ back. They're not going to bring Paxton back. There's no good lefty starter available in free agency. Trevor Bauer's a righty, and I don't want him anyway. I don't see him working well in New York. That goes for both New York teams. The best lefty starter in free agency is probably Jose Quintana. I like Quintana. There was a time that I wanted him on the Yankees desperately. You can go back to one of the first ever Beyond the Games that was podcasted, and I said I would do a trade of Judge or Frazier and Torres or Mateo for Quintana. Thank God that didn't happen. There's no question I was 100% wrong about that. If it had been Frazier and Mateo, Jorge Mateo, former top prospect for the Yankees, was traded to the Athletics in the Sonny Gray trade, it would have been fine. But if it had been Judge and Mateo or Torres and Frazier, disastrous trade. Forget giving up Torres and or Judge. Quintana, since he's left the White Sox, hasn't been the same pitcher. With the White Sox, he was 50 and 54 with a 3.51 ERA. He averaged 156 strikeouts per game. With the Cubs, he's 26 and 20. I like that the win-loss record is a little better. but he has a 4.36 ERA and only 420 strikeouts. That's only about 107 strikeouts a season. That's not that good. Baseball Reference, it doesn't let you incorporate the 2017 season with just the White Sox or just the Cubs, so the numbers may be a little bit off, but you get the point I'm making. Quintana with the Cubs has not been the same as Quintana with the White Sox. But if you want to look at it just through the lens of bringing him in for this year, Quintana only started 1 game last year. He only pitched in 4 total. The year before that, he went 13-9 with a 4.68 ERA. I like the 13-9 record, but a 4.68 ERA isn't going to get the job done. The Yankees can do better than Quintana. They can do better than bringing Paxton back or Happ back. If Marco Gonzalez is truly available, Jim Bowden of The Athletic, in advance of the trade deadline, said that he was. He made perfect sense for the Yankees. And the Mariners would probably want Frazier for him. So if you can replace Clint Frazier with Michael Brantley and get Marco Gonzalez, or any lefty starter like Gonzalez, it's a no-brainer. You do it. Michael Brantley is better than Clint Frazier. He just is. For the future, would you rather have Frazier? Probably. Frazier's 26, and Brantley's 33. But again, there's no guarantee that Frazier recaptures what he did last year. It makes perfect sense for the Yankees to sign Brantley and trade Frazier for a lefty starter. I'm sick of building for the future. I want to win now. It's been 11 seasons since this team has even been in the World Series. That is an eternity to Yankees fans. Damn the torpedoes and go full speed ahead. Sign Brantley and trade Frazier for a lefty starter. I have no problem with that at all. Alright, now I'll give you some NFL Valk talk by making my 3 picks for the week. I have not been good recently. I went 0 for last week. I had a losing record the week before that. I was doing really good, now I'm not. Let's see if I can right the ship. I like the Colts -3 over the Texans. The Texans got hit with a couple big suspensions. Bradley Roby and Will Fuller are going to be unavailable for the rest of the season. Those are 2 huge losses. Roby plays a big role for the Texans in their secondary, and Will Fuller was their best wide receiver. It's kind of funny, there were a bunch of Packers fans that were calling for their team to trade for Fuller. Imagine how it would have gone if Fuller had been suspended as a member of the Packers. Kind of an interesting hypothetical to think about. Even though I'm not 100% sold on the Colts being a great team, a threat in the playoffs, anything like that, I think they're a tad overrated. They will beat the Texans by more than a field goal. I don't see how the Texans keep this a field goal game. Give me the Colts -3, and give me the Steelers -7 over Washington. This game is going to take place on Monday at 5 o'clock. Just thought I'd throw that out there, so that way you don't miss it. But it doesn't matter when this game is being played. The Steelers are going to destroy Washington. I understand that the Steelers did not have an impressive win on Wednesday. Believe me, I watched every second of that game. But here's the difference between the Ravens and Washington. The Washington offense is better than that Ravens offense that we saw on Wednesday. No question. But the Ravens defense, which is the reason that that game was as close as it was, all those goal line stands that they had, isn't even in the same universe as the Washington defense. Ron Rivera's done a really good job with it, but they just don't have the playmakers that the Ravens have on defense. They have Jonathan Allen, Ronald Darby, Chase Young, and Montez Sweat. That's it. Only 4 guys. Matt Ioannidis and Landon Collins are on IR. I'm not trying to diminish guys like Allen, Darby, Young, and Sweat, but those are only 4 guys. The Ravens defense has more guys they need to account for than that. I think this is going to be a 2-score game. I think the Steelers were jerked around too much by the NFL. That can account for their subpar performance on Wednesday. I do think they're going to go 12-0. Give me the Steelers -7. As for my upset, I like the Jaguars +10 over the Vikings. I'm just not sold on the Vikings. I understand they're hot. Alright? 4-1 in their last 5. But look at who they've beaten. The Packers, which is impressive. No question. Great win. After that, they beat the Lions and Bears. Not exactly juggernauts. They lost to the Cowboys, and then they beat the Panthers by 1 point on Sunday. This is not a good Vikings team. Whereas you take a look at the Jaguars, they've had some close losses recently. They have not played bad recently. Look at what they did last month. They lost to the Texans by 2 points. They lost to the Packers by 4 points. They got creamed by the Steelers. Okay, fine. Then they lost to the Browns by 2 points, excluding the Steelers game, which is fair because they're the best team in football. The Jaguars lost all of their November games by a total margin of 8 points. Mike Glennon looked really good on Sunday. Completed 20 of his 35 passes, threw for 235 yards and 2 touchdowns. James Robinson was insane. He had 22 carries for 128 yards and a touchdown. This is one of the greatest rookie seasons we've seen from an undrafted running back in a long time. This is giving off Arian Foster vibes. I do think the Jaguars are going to cover the 10-point spread. I don't even think it's out of the realm of possibility that they could win this game outright. I'm not going to go as far as saying that you should bet the Jaguars on the money line, but you should bet the Jaguars +10. I do think they're going to cover that spread. So my picks are Colts -3, Steelers -7, and Jaguars +10. Alright, now I'll give you some college football Valk talk. And there are a few games that I really want to preview. The first one is tonight's game. Louisiana Lafayette against Appalachian State. This is a game that only features one ranked team. Louisiana Lafayette is ranked 25th by the CFP committee. But Appalachian State should be ranked also. UNC is 6-3. They're really not that good. They lost to FSU and Virginia. How are they still ranked? Oregon is 3-1. They just lost to their rival, Oregon State, in the Civil War. I don't understand how they're still ranked. Appalachian State should be ranked, but of course they're screwed over because they're in the Sun Belt. I hate when the committee does this. I hate when the AP does this. I hate when the coaches do this. We shouldn't thumb our nose at teams that play in mid-major conferences just because they play in mid-major conferences. If they're a really good team, and trust me, Appalachian State is a really good team, we should recognize that fact. But going back to this game, when you look at the Raging Cajuns, this is a really well-rounded team. Their offense is the 26th best in the nation in terms of points per game, and their defense is the 23rd best in the nation in terms of points given up per game. Levi Lewis is having a really good senior season. He's completed over 62% of his passes. He's thrown for over 2,000 yards, 16 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He has the ability to run. I want him to run more. The thing is, though, Billy Napier has a couple other mouths that he needs to feed in terms of running the football. Elijah Mitchell and Trey Ragus are one of the best running back duos in the nation. They're both averaging 6 yards a carry. They both have 7 touchdowns. You combine that with guys like Peter LeBlanc, Kyron Lacey, and Jalen Williams as pass catchers. This is a scary Raging Cajun offense. And like I said earlier, their defense may be just as scary, if not scarier. Farrod Gardner and Zion Hill both have 3 sacks. Lorenzo McCaskill's having a good season. So is Andre Jones. Braylon Trahan has 4 interceptions and 9 passes deflected. You combine him with guys like Eric Garrer and Mekhi Garner. This is a really good Raging Cajun team. Whoever they get matched up against in terms of their bowl game is going to have their hands full. Meanwhile, you look at Appalachian State, they're another well-rounded team. They're more reliant on their defense than they are their offense, but they still have a solid offense. Zach Thomas is having a really good season. He's completed 2/3 of his passes. He usually makes smart decisions. 17 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's a very cerebral player. This is his senior year. I don't see a team taking a chance on him in the draft, but he's had a really good college career. He started 3 seasons for the Mountaineers. In 18 and 19, they won the New Orleans Bowl. I don't know if they're going to be in the New Orleans Bowl again, but it wouldn't surprise me if Thomas won his third bowl game of his college career this year. App State is that talented. His offensive weapons are going to be limited in this game. Dietrich Harrington is out. He took a big hit in the Mountaineers game against Texas State. He missed their game against Georgia State. And he's not going to play tonight. That's a big loss for the Mountaineers. Harrington has 595 yards on the season and 7 touchdowns. Sean Clark likes to share the load at running back. Fortunately, though, he has a guy in Cameron Peoples who will be able to carry the load by himself if that's what Clark decides to do. He has 639 yards on the season and 6 touchdowns. Malik Williams and Thomas Hennigan are a solid wide receiver duo. They each have over 460 receiving yards. They only have 5 touchdowns between the two of them. When App State gets in the red zone, they like to pound the rock. It's going to be interesting to see if they do that tonight without the help of Dietrich Harrington. All in all, I think his absence is going to be a little too much for the Mountaineers to account for. While they should be ranked now, 7-3 means they won't be deserving of a ranking. Give me Louisiana Lafayette tonight. Moving on now to a big Big Ten matchup. Indiana versus Wisconsin. You've got a feel for the Hoosiers here. They have a real chance to win the Big Ten Conference. And Michael Penix is out for the year. All due respect to Jack Tuttle, he's not going to be able to carry the load. He's just not as talented as Penix is. You may be wondering to yourself, Jacob, what are you talking about? OSU is undefeated. Indiana has a loss. OSU has already missed 2 games. They missed the Maryland game and the Illinois game. If they miss just one more game, they're going to play tomorrow against MSU. But if they miss that Michigan game, which, let's be honest, is a possibility, the coronavirus is unpredictable, it can affect either program, that's it. They're disqualified from participating in the Big Ten title game. So that means it's probably going to be Indiana versus Northwestern for the Big Ten title. It's definitely going to be Indiana if it's not OSU. Northwestern is still up in the air. Iowa still has a shot. But Northwestern is in first place right now. There's a reason that Pat Fitzgerald is getting NFL head coaching buzz. He's done a sensational job there. Before I get into Indiana-Wisconsin, I just want to talk about what it would mean if OSU didn't participate in the Big Ten title game. What does it mean for their CFP hopes? Would the committee leave out a team like Texas A&M, Florida, or Cincinnati if OSU finishes the season 5-0? Or 4-1 for that matter. I hope they would. Hell, I'd put Cincinnati in there now, and if OSU loses or doesn't play against Michigan, I'd put BYU in. I hate leaving undefeated teams out. I hated when UCF was left out. I hated when Boise State was left out. What more do you want these teams to do? I understand the one-loss teams. A team like Louisiana Lafayette, they have a loss. Fine, they have no shot. I understand that. But how do you leave a team like Cincinnati out? Clemson has a loss. Cincy doesn't. You want to tell me that loss was with DJ Uiagalelei starting, not Trevor Lawrence? I get that, but that still reflects negatively on Clemson. A loss is a loss. My top 4 is Alabama, Notre Dame, OSU, Cincinnati. If OSU loses or doesn't play against the Wolverines, Cincy moves up to 3rd, and BYU takes the number 4 spot. Yeah, that's right. I'm putting BYU in over teams like Clemson, Texas A&M, Florida, and Georgia. Undefeated teams are better than teams with losses. Would the committee do that? Absolutely not. In fact, if OSU beats the Spartans, which they're probably going to do, MSU's a tough team. Their record doesn't show it, but they are a tough team. They just beat Northwestern. But even if the Buckeyes beat them, and they don't play against the Wolverines, the top 4 probably won't change. Remember 2017? Alabama didn't play in the SEC title game. It was Auburn, Georgia. Alabama still got into the CFP and ended up winning the national title that year. That was when Tua replaced Jalen Hurts. Tua led him to an incredible comeback against Georgia. The CFP committee doesn't care about conference title games. I think that's a joke. Barring an OSU loss, they're going to be in the CFP. There's no question about that. That shouldn't be the case, but that's the way it is. There is another scenario that needs to be talked about, and then I'll get into Indiana, Wisconsin, I promise. If OSU misses out on the CFP, let's say they lose to Michigan State, or they lose to Michigan, does Justin Fields still go pro? I don't think he does. It's a different situation than Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has already accomplished everything you can in college football. He has a national title. He won that game's MVP. Oh my God, he doesn't have a Heisman Trophy. Let me tell you, he could win it this year. Lawrence is going pro. He's guaranteed to be the first overall pick. Justin Fields is probably the number 2 overall pick. If he misses out on playing for a national title, I think he stays in school. What's important to note is the 2022 NFL Draft, as it stands right now, doesn't look great for quarterbacks. It's Sam Howell and Keaton Slovis. I like those guys, but I don't see them as perennial Pro Bowlers in the NFL. Justin Fields, if he stays in school, is basically guaranteed to be the top quarterback prospect in 2022. And that probably means he's going to be the first overall pick. So what do you want? Do you want to take the money now and be the second overall pick if you don't play for a national title? Or do you want to give it one more go to get OSU back to the promised land? If OSU makes the CFP, Fields is going pro. There's no question about that. But if OSU misses out on the CFP, I think there's a strong chance he stays. And that would be a nightmare for the Jaguars. Okay, now it's time to talk about Indiana, Wisconsin. Like I said, Michael Penix is out. He tore the ACL in his right knee. Jack Tuttle's going to start. Tuttle's not that good. He's going to have to rely a lot on Stevie Scott. I like Scott, but I don't see him being able to single-handedly lead the Hoosiers to victory over this really good Wisconsin defense. It doesn't matter that Indiana has Ty Freifogel, Whop Philyor, and Peyton Hendershot. They still need a quarterback to get the ball to him. I don't think you can trust Tuttle to do that consistently. Defensively, Indiana has some playmakers. Jerome Johnson, Micah McFadden, Jalen Williams, Taiwan Mullen, and Jamar Johnson. They're going to make Graham Mertz's life difficult, but not difficult enough. I like Graham Mertz. He's had a really good freshman season so far. I understand it's only 3 games, but in those 3 games, he's looked really impressive. He plays in a pro-style offense. I love what he's doing with Jake Ferguson, one of the best tight ends in the nation. This is a Wisconsin team that in a year or two could contend for a national title. That's how good Mertz is. Their running game is also pretty good. Jalen Berger's a solid running back. Nakia Watson's okay, but it's all Mertz and Ferguson. Defensively, Wisconsin is incredible. They've only given up 11.7 points per game. That's the 3rd best mark in the nation. They have a bunch of playmakers. Leo Chenal, Jack Sanborn, CJ Getz, Nick Herbig, Isaiah Loudermilk, Scott Nelson, and Titus Toller. They're all really talented players. I don't see how Tuttle beats that stout defense. Give me the Badgers. The last game to talk about is a game that almost didn't happen. If Liberty didn't have a COVID outbreak, they'd be taking on Coastal Carolina tomorrow. Instead, it's BYU that's going to get the chance to end the Chanticleer's dream season. We're getting a battle of the undefeateds tomorrow. You gotta love it. This is the game of the week. Make no mistake about it. I love what Kalani Sitake has done for the Cougars this year. Zach Wilson has had a sensational season. He has vaulted himself into first-round consideration. He's completed over 74% of his passes for over 2,700 yards. He's thrown 26 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. He's not afraid to air the ball out, and he makes really smart decisions. I like Zach Wilson a lot. Tyler Algier is one of the best running backs in the nation. Dax Milne and Gunnar Romney are one of the best wide receiver duos in the nation. BYU's offense is a force to be reckoned with. But their defense is no slouch. They can get after the quarterback. Tyler Batty, Kairos Tonga, Isaiah Kaufusi, Zach Daw, George Udo, and Gabe Summers all have at least 2 sacks this year. They're going to make life very difficult for Grayson McCall. McCall has a really good arm. An underrated arm. Likes to put a lot of air under the football. He's thrown 20 touchdowns to just 1 interception. The completion percentage is really good, 67.2%. He's thrown for 1,747 yards. But I'd like the completion percentage to be a little bit better. He can get there. I like McCall. It wouldn't surprise me if in a couple years we talked about him as a possible NFL quarterback. He can also kill you with his legs. He has 365 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. You've got to account for a bunch of players out of that backfield. McCall, Torrance Marable, Reese White, and Shamari Jones. If Jamie Chadwell chooses to call a passing play, Javon Haley and Isaiah Likely are a really solid wide receiver duo. But I want to talk about their defense now. The Chanticleer's defense is probably the most underrated defense in the nation. They have a bunch of guys that can get after the quarterback. Taron Jackson, CJ Brewer, Jeffrey Gunter, and Silas Kelly all have at least 4.5 sacks. And DeJordan Strong has 5 interceptions. I'd expect him to be lined up against Milne or Romney at all times. This is going to be a great game. This is the game of the week. Make no mistake about it. All in all, I think Baylor just has the better players right now. Zach Wilson is better than Grayson McCall. Tyler Algier is better than any runner that the Chanticleers have. Milne and Romney are better than Haley and Likely. The Chanticleers have them on defense. There's no question. But in college football, I'll pick an explosive offense over a fantastic defense any day of the week. Give me the Cougars. New York Jets instant recap comes your way right after their game against the Raiders on Sunday. Regular episodes of the Jacob Valk Show come your way every weekday afternoon. Until next time, I am Jacob Valk saying that I'm going to play with harder nonchalance this year.